right, welcome into This Week in Paradise, Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that they are living in a modern-day spiritual paradise. I'm your host here, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, most importantly, a kid raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses throughout the 70s and 80s. As we do, some of this stuff can be triggering. We try to have some fun, especially this week. We're going off the rails a bit, but just note that all sarcasm, humor, experiences, and whatnot shared here is never meant to offend. Okay. First and foremost, a second warning. I'm not trying to ruin childhoods this week. And I still love seeing kids so happy. And that includes us big people who still see ourselves as kids. So just note that everything that follows is not meant to shatter your world. It is simply an off-the-rails comparison that has lived in my head for many, many years. Okay, you've been warned. I grew up on Disneyland. I know. Disney has become much more controversial as of late, and of course there are many conspiracy theories surrounding Disney and Disneyland and all things House of Mouse. Lots of weird stories. I get it. I've heard the rumors regarding children, tunnels, secret subliminal messages, cartoons with suggestions hidden in scenes, Walt Disney's political past and his affiliations, the weird stuff surrounding Club 33 in the park. I've heard it all. I've heard all of these stories. If any of these things, by the way, ever prove to be true, well, let's just say it's all very disturbing. It is very disturbing stuff that's floating around out there regarding Disneyland. What I can tell you is that the price to get into Disneyland in 2025 is the most outrageous thing I can confirm. It is outrageous. You have to put a second mortgage on your house just to take your family to see Mickey Mouse in 2025. It's insane. But for kids in the 1970s and 1980s, Disney, it was still a thing. Sure, it might have just been my family. We grew up in Disney and my mom loved Disney, but we weren't alone. Disneyland was a big deal. Became a vacation destination. And when we lived in Southern California, my mother once surprised us by taking us to one of those special family discount nights they used to have. They do it at night. You could get in for cheaper. She surprised us, said we're going to a baseball game, and we showed up at Disneyland. It was fantastic. And there was one park back in those days, for those that don't know, where California Adventure sits now. That used to be a parking lot. It's very strange still when I go in there. We had a book of tickets back in the day. You had to get on the rides, and the e-ticket was where all the action was. The best rides required that e-ticket, and you only got a few of them. So you have saved those up in most cases for things like the Matterhorn or Space Mountain, and I don't know if my timelines are right. This is all from memory. So it wasn't until years later that I ever went inside that little tiki room, since that used to be on the e-ticket back in the day, and we were not using the e-ticket to go watch a bunch of singing birds. So I literally never went in there until I was an adult. As time went on and I became a parent, Disneyland and Disney World were still vacation destinations. They were part of my childhood. I took my son. The original Lion King and Aladdin were on endless loop in the old DVR. That's an old machine for you kids out there. And little people, the kids still look forward to trips to Disney. Oddly enough, as the years went on, I ended up going there a few times on business trips held in the hotel. And our teams were given free admission to the park after boring business meetings. And I have to say, when you go to Disneyland with coworkers or you're just bored and you just walk the park alone because you have a free ticket, you have a completely different experience. It's not quite as fun. It's really something, not to mention you're older. But during those times, it gave me time for reflection because nobody likes the creepy old guy traveling alone to sit next to them or behind them in the boat on Pirates of the Caribbean. Ever had that happen? I tried to avoid it. If you really want to make a family uncomfortable, sit in that back row of the boat alone while a family is sitting in front of you trying to enjoy themselves. Dad there usually keeps his eye on you when the rest of the family is watching Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow. It's creepy. Don't do it. I tried to avoid it. And no, I didn't do that. So relax. However, when I became an adult and wasn't jumping off Space Mountain anymore and getting back in line over and over again, the experience definitely changed. And as is the case with overthinkers, I found myself for the first time as a grown adult in the happiest place on earth. You guessed it, thinking about the happiest people on earth, Jehovah's Witnesses, because I used to be one in most of my visits there. In a strange twist of fate, the churros suddenly tasted a little different in the park, and so did the Dole pineapple whips. I still very much enjoyed them, but gone was any childhood dreams of sailing away on a pirate ship. Wearing mouse ears didn't look as good on me as a grown man. And that cute girl that was dressed up as Jasmine from Aladdin, well, she was really Rachel from Redondo Beach, and she has a second job at Old Navy down the street. Let me just say that becoming an adult sucks for many reasons. More bizarrely, over the years, as the kids went wild with excitement and I chomped on a churro and was happy for them, I was hit with my own random and perhaps misguided, gonna let you be the judge, of how Disneyland and all things Disney looked an awful lot like Jehovah's Witnesses. And I know this is weird. This is where my brain is this week. You've been warned. I'm weird, and I still go every now and then, and I don't want to ruin anyone's childhood or family vacations by changing what they see when they go down Main Street. But there I was. I suddenly was looking around thinking, this looks an awful lot like the world Jehovah's Witnesses live in. And look, when you're older, you notice things you didn't when you were a kid. You're not as impressed with some guy named Chad walking around in a Donald Duck costume. Your mind starts to drift. And there I was. My mind was drifting, so bear with me. The fact that I'm giving anyone a peek inside my overactive head is alarming, and it can be scary. And it goes to show the depth of weirdness, at least from where I sit, of what a Jehovah's Witness inherits. So I'm asking you to come along with me. Walk through the park with me today. If you want to bail on this episode, now is the time, because this one is really off the rails and strange. However, I think I make some pretty valid points. I'm about to dive into the bizarre similarities and connections between Jehovah's Witnesses, their world, and Disneyland. During my last few visits, my comparison to Jehovah's Witnesses and Disneyland was staring me in the face as I pulled into the parking lot. Most will remember the old sign on Harbor Boulevard, Disneyland. It's huge with the tagline on the bottom that says, "The happiest place on earth." I immediately began to question the hypocrisy I had been living since I was a little guy. I had been taught that Jehovah's organization, including my local Kingdom Hall, were the happiest places on earth. Jehovah's Witnesses cannot deny this. They start by saying Jesus of the Gospels was talking about them in the 21st century. From Matthew 18:20 of the New World Translation, he said, quote, "For where there are 2 or 3 gathered together in my name, there I am in their midst." End quote. Is he writing Dumbo? Hold tight. With each visit to the Magic Kingdom, I went looking for Jesus on the Matterhorn. He wasn't there. I even went to the one place he surely would never consider being, the Haunted Mansion. Maybe he was even cutting in line, using his famous line to other would-be writers, "Get behind me, Satan." Or maybe he was, "Get behind me, Bill and Joy from Arizona. I'm riding first. I have a fast pass." Was he inside the ride rebuking demons? Was he sending ghosts into pigs and running them off cliffs? Nope. No sign of Jesus on the Haunted Mansion. And yet, here was Disneyland claiming that they were the happiest place on earth. And the only sign of Jesus was a couple with a book cart standing in downtown Disney, and I walked right past them. Had Disneyland been lying to me about being the happiest place on earth this entire time? No way. Tell me it isn't so. I couldn't find Jesus and Jehovah's Witnesses together, two or three of them, or anybody in anyone else's midst, unless, of course, he was hiding in Pirates of the Caribbean and I missed him. But that claim that Jehovah's Witnesses were the happiest people on earth and yet not witnessing inside Disneyland left me perplexed, got me thinking, because I remember the governing body making many claims that they were the happiest people on earth. Shouldn't they be there? Shouldn't they be in the happiest place on earth? From the Watchtower of 1988, March 1st, page 17, we're told, quote, "Indeed, in every country, Jehovah's people are the best and the happiest," end quote. Okay, so where were they? Where are they? Where can I find them in Disneyland? From the Watchtower of 1997, May 1st, page 23, the messengers, quote, "The messengers of godly peace are the happiest people on earth today," end quote. Okay, I heard them right. The happiest people on earth. So naturally, they're at the happiest place on earth, right? It's only natural. At the Kingdom Ministry of February 1994, page 5, paragraph 16, we're told, quote, "We are the happiest people on the face of the earth," end quote. I could keep going. I'll stop. The claims of the governing body that Jehovah's Witnesses are the happiest people on earth go on, but they never once mention hanging out at Disneyland. They do mention how happy Kingdom Halls are in their congregations, so clearly at this point, as an adult with way too much time on my hand, now in the park and not a little guy, I realize Disneyland has been lying to me. It couldn't be the governing body. From the Watchtower of 1957, January 15th, pages 52 through 53, paragraphs 16 and 17 tell us this, quote, "What is it that gives a congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses a warmth not found in the world? Servants, does an atmosphere of welcome prevail at your Kingdom Hall? Are strangers made to feel right at home? Are they taken on a tour of the hall and the charts, convention pictures, etc. explained? Is the Kingdom Hall opened for enough in advance of a public meeting so that a stranger never has to wait outside? Do the brothers readily share their songbooks and the Watchtower with a stranger? In congregations where the servants make it an unfailing point to welcome all, strangers and brothers alike, there is such a glowing warmth that brothers are reluctant to leave the Kingdom Hall after a meeting," end quote. Move over, Walt Disney. This type of happy atmosphere is all made possible because Jehovah personally invites people to the truly happiest place on earth, his Kingdom Halls. From the Watchtower of 2015, July 15th, pages 28 and 29, paragraph 7, we are told this, quote, "Our respect for the God who invites us to Christian meetings should be manifested in our decorum, dress, and grooming. Of course, Jehovah wants his servants and other guests to feel comfortable there. End quote. So it became apparent to me upon seeing the sign there that I was about to give a lying amusement park my money. My conscience was being tested. Would I spend money in a place claiming to be the happiest place on earth, but filled with worldly people, non-Jehovah's Witnesses? Where was the Kingdom Hall sign? Where can I find that URL we don't talk about, the little blue placard? Couldn't find it. What was I doing there? Maybe I could just let people cut in line on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad to recreate the happy feelings we all saw inside our Kingdom Halls. Remember? From the Kingdom Ministry of August 2001, page 3, paragraph 7, we're told, quote, after coming to a Kingdom Hall for the first time, a man said, I met more genuinely loving people, total strangers, in one day than I had ever met in the church in which I was raised. It was apparent that I had found the truth. End quote. As a result, he changed his life course, and 7 months later, he was baptized. End quote to the quote. Wow. How he knew those Jehovah's Witnesses were genuinely loving people within minutes of meeting them is downright incredible. I'd like to encourage him to stick around a while. Some things are going to become apparent. But he's obviously a great judge of character. How he knew he had found the truth after one meeting at the Kingdom Hall is incredible. And I must say it's obviously the work of angels, so move over Tinkerbell. The angel Gabriel is in the house. It is clear that the Kingdom Halls of Jehovah's Witnesses are the real happiest places on earth. And I came to grips with the reality that my belief that Disneyland made me happy as a little guy was nothing more than satanic propaganda meant to distract me from all the joy and happiness found inside the windowless buildings I went to 3 days a week as a kid. Disneyland has parades and shows, but the Kingdom Hall, well, it had elders with monotone voices reminding me over 1,000 times how important it was to make return visits to not-at-homes. The happiness was overwhelming. And again, the sarcasm is bad this week. But I learned to ignore that bold claim by Walt Disney's guys and gals. For a Jehovah's Witness, including those standing there in downtown Disney with book carts during my last visit, we all know the happiest place on earth is anywhere you find Jehovah's Witnesses gathered. So store that away in the back of your head, and let's enter deeper into the world of Disney. I must say, after spending my life savings to get into the park, I've enjoyed watching all the families take a family photo in front of the train station inside the gates. You know the spot. The excitement for a day of fun is palpable the second you walk in. The kids are coming unglued, wanting to race into the park and get on rides. Let's get on rides. They all got a favorite ride. You usually see one, if not more, characters milling around there at the gate, taking photos with families, greeting people, greeting the little people. And some kids are so excited. Some are otherwise completely freaked out and bawling. And I'm throwing my little brother under the bus. He had some real issues with Donald Duck during one of our visits as a kid. We'll leave that alone and move on. But it was at this point I realized as an adult, and I know I'm slow, that most, if not all of my childhood outside football had seen me loving fictional characters. Why did this suddenly dawn on me? I don't know. But out of nowhere, standing there just inside the entrance, I realized, wow, my entire life is based on fictional characters for so many years. As a kid who loved to read and was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, my earliest experiences in shaping my own personality were influenced by characters I was exposed to in books, in movies, in music. And that did include the fun-loving, highly moral characters of Disney. Truthfully, and I'm just going to throw myself under the bus here, I still identify with my guy Peter Pan because, well, I'd rather not grow up. And who doesn't want to fly all the time? Come on. But without much thought, I was even more influenced by characters, real people found in God's Word, the Bible. People come from all over the world to get a photo with Mickey Mouse, with Pluto, with Donald Duck, with Chip and Dale. The list is long. Why? Because they put a smile on your face. They're cartoon characters. Who doesn't want to be loyal like Mickey Mouse is to Minnie? I picked up on it. What boy doesn't want to pull the sword from the stone? Who doesn't want to be recognized and loved for who they are, just like Pinocchio? Who doesn't want to be a flying elephant like Dumbo? Oh, okay. This one's off the rails. Never mind. But you get the point. And well, suddenly it's dawning on me, and it relates well in my mind, to the same character arcs found in something we are told is real. And that is the characters found in the Bible. While I admired Peter Pan's nimble use of sword, it paled in comparison to King David's, right? That slingshot, his swords. He was a warrior. David killed his tens of thousands. Peter was able to resist Tiger Lily's romantic gestures because he was already in love with Wendy, just like King David was able to resist Bathsheba. And oh, wait a minute. Sorry, bad example. But you get the point. And while Disneyland is filled with animals and Disney World even has an animal kingdom, well, it's all possible only because the same person in the park sits there and accesses their brain and realizes that the incredible character of a man that was able to find contraception for 500 years, then gather all the animals we see today into a floating ark, all while being the first Jehovah's Witness pioneer, my guy Noah, it's him that made all of this possible, even at Disneyland. I know Enoch would like a word. He was talking about Jehovah first, but come on. All he had to do was preach. Noah had to practice safe sex in his marriage. He had to walk on foot to undiscovered lands thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away. Build something like a boat without any hand tools, all while preaching about Jehovah. I gotta tell you, I think Jehovah's Witnesses should rename Gilead Missionary School to Noah's School for Multitasking, Preaching, and More. They gotta change the name. And who needs Disney's Hercules when we got Samson? Who needs jealous King Saul when we have jealous Scar from the Lion King? Who needs the older man Jafar chasing Jasmine in Aladdin when we have King David being kept warm by cuddling with much younger virgin girls? Wait a minute. Oops, sorry. Wow, that just doesn't sound good when you say it out loud, but it's a true story. See 1 Kings chapter 1 for all the details. Love characters. And in a moment, walking into Disneyland, bam, there's not only the characters that are taking pictures, but for some odd reason as an adult, I realized my life had been shaped by similar characters, some of them not quite as nice as Mickey Mouse. And I guess it was a problem for me just confessing that I always liked the bad guys anyway. Captain Hook, Jafar, Ursula. Why were they always the more interesting characters in Disney? But recognizing the use of fictional characters in my own life by means of Disney, and let's face it, Jehovah's Witnesses, well, it was a profound similarity I could not ignore as an adult. Wait a minute. I looked up to all of these people. Once we take the obligatory character photo, we then start to enter the park for a day of rides, overpriced food, and lines that resembled the sisters' bathrooms at district conventions. There's a landmark I always look for when I enter Disneyland. Most are going to know it well, particularly big fans of Disney. If you don't, look for it next time you go. It's on the arch of the bridge below the train tracks as you enter the park. It says something that looks a lot different to me now as an adult and former Jehovah's Witness. The plaque says, quote, "Here you leave today and enter the world of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy," end quote. I look at it every time I visit. It's just that moment where, okay, I'm checking my brain at the door. Sound familiar? But one visit, I'm going to say it was around 13 years ago, I read it like I always do, and suddenly it hit differently. It used to put a real smile on my face. I can forget everything and just go have a good time. Check my thinking at the door. I was, and I am, a guy with a healthy imagination, clearly from this stupid episode. And well, that sign, this signaled in that moment, I could check any rational thinking, any responsibilities, and anything serious, anything stressing me out right there at the sign. Check out. I was entering a new space, and it was meant to be fun. It was meant to make me happy. But well, at the risk of ruining someone's next Disney experience, I'm going to warn you again. I realized I looked at that sign completely differently now. And it's a bummer. You might say, why? Well, frankly, as an adult and someone who used to be part of a cult, the entire life of a Jehovah's Witness, and damn, this hurts to say, is all about leaving today and entering a world of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy. Is it not? You see, despite claiming they're the happiest people on earth and their organization is the happiest place on earth, everything today it's terrible. It's absolutely awful, according to the governing body. Today is terrible. There is nothing good about today. They believe today and every day that follows it are actually part of a little timeline they call the last days, a day that will end in the universe's biggest blood spilling ever on record. Doesn't that sound great? Today is bad. Today is evil. Today isn't the real life. We're going to leave today any second now. A Jehovah's Witness is never to live for the moment or today. We are leaving today, just like we do at Disneyland. Their entire religion, every single doctrine, all of their belief systems are centered around leaving today. It doesn't matter if you're a future paradise dweller or one of the 144,000 going to heaven. We are all leaving today behind, just like the Disney sign says. Leaving today is encouraged in action and thought inside everything a Jehovah's Witness does. Everything they hope for, everything they believe in, every problem is solved after today. So leaving it is no big deal. Consider this quote, "The danger lies in becoming too involved with the present system of things. Perhaps a whole family, parents and children, become so enveloped in present pursuits that their vision of the future is no longer real to them. However, let us review what lies ahead of us in the future with the purpose of confirming in our hearts that what Jehovah has promised will really happen." End quote. Interesting quote. Everything's in the future. And incidentally, This reference about leaving today and focusing on tomorrow and the future is from the Watchtower of June 15th, page 374, paragraph 2, in the year, oh boy, 1975. Leaving today behind, even if it is 50 years deep from the day you left this day behind. You're supposed to look at the future, according to the Watchtower. But the emphasis is not living for today, I should say, is emphasized again in more recent times. The October Watchtower of 2023, page 22, paragraph 11 tells us this, quote, "Now, take a long-range view of the future. The Bible says that our Creator has even put eternity in our heart. Think what that means for you and your relationship with Jehovah." End quote. The references to leaving tomorrow, or today behind rather, and looking ahead are endless to Jehovah's Witnesses. It's always coming. It's never here. The example that gives me personally a stomach ache is my mother's favorite Kingdom song. It's currently Kingdom song number 144. I had to look that up. But back in the day when I was a kid, it was song 119 in the old songbooks, the old pink ones. I think it was in the old brown one too, the poopy brown one. The song is called "Keep Your Eyes on the Prize." And for those that remember this song, maybe enjoy it today, it's a tearjerker. It's one of those that induces goosebumps when you're singing it with thousands of other Jehovah's Witnesses at the district convention. It's all about leaving today and focusing on tomorrow. But you want a disturbing update on this song? I encourage you to go to the Holy Spirit-powered website of Jehovah's Witnesses. With one search, I almost fell out of my chair, and I'm not kidding. This was my mom's favorite song. It really was one of the better songs. It's a very pretty song, all about tomorrow, never about today. But if you go put in the search bar today, "Keep your eyes on the prize," a Jehovah's Witness is going to find a downloadable PDF featuring cartoon characters for children in the Jehovah's Friend series. Think Poor Man's Disney or an organization trying to copy Disney for kids. But this PDF is titled "Compare Life Now and in the Future." I'm not kidding when I say I had a visceral reaction when I found this. I'll try to include it on the YouTube tiles for this episode if someone wants to see it and doesn't want to go look for it. Note to myself, I need to figure out how to do that. But once downloaded, a Jehovah's Witness kid can put this little mini poster on their bedroom wall. And it features the following. Are you ready for this? Remember, we're leaving today behind. It features 4 scenes. A blind Jehovah's Witness with the scene of the future showing him painting in paradise. It shows a scene of pollution versus kids eating fruit in paradise. These are all cartoons, by the way. It shows an old couple, and then it shows them young again in paradise. And finally, the one that made me sickest, it shows a little girl in a wheelchair versus her hugging panda bears standing and walking normally in paradise. It's a poster. It's for kids. It's leaving today behind, just like Disneyland. It's unbelievable. And it's sick, frankly. But it's all done with cartoon characters. Remind you of anybody? Really, really disturbing stuff. A beautiful song in its own right, But they continue to build on such thoughts that we are leaving today behind. And look, walking into Disneyland and looking at my favorite sign, it hit me, and it hit me hard. And how about the irony that Disneyland includes a section called Tomorrowland? I'll get more into that later. The park has been forever including rides showing innovation and how much better life will be in the future. Sound like anybody you know? Only to have, ironically, many of those rides of innovation disappear over the years in favor of more modern themes. Who here remembers the People Movers? Who's old enough? It's the little tram on tracks above your head in Tomorrowland. It's honestly where parents would go to sit down and catch their breath and gather their sanity after running the park. Well, now, that tomorrow that was promised is just an abandoned track. They don't do the People Movers anymore. And by the way, the prediction that we would all travel in People Movers when I was going to Disneyland as a kid, well, it never became true. Sound familiar? Men guessing at what the future holds, and it's all going to be better. I think we've seen this before. What it means to a Jehovah's Witness is that anything you want now, any dreams you have now, well, look, we're leaving today behind, just like we do at Disneyland. Everything that may add to your happiness is in the future. It's in Tomorrowland, folks, or just beyond the entrance where the sign is. But going back to that sign, just like that sign says, a Jehovah's Witness is entering a world of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy inside God's organization. The sign is so appropriate, it's just too painful. We just covered how tomorrow stood out to me, but do I really need to explain how a Jehovah's Witness is constantly ushered back to yesterday, just like the Disney sign? Everything a Jehovah's Witness bases their life on starts with the past. In fact, you can't leave today behind and focus on tomorrow unless you spend copious amounts of your life considering yesterday. We're only here discussing any of this because our lives are based on an ancient book, mostly written by nameless, faceless people who claim to have been everything from sheep herders to kings in the ancient world of yesterday. We want to leave today behind because a snake spoke to a perfect naked woman. We need to leave today behind because an old book tells us perfect angels, invisible and up in the sky, not possessing human junk, still manage to sleep with our women and set the world on a course to destruction. Yesterday. Jehovah's Witnesses are led by 11 men in the 21st century who claim yesterday, especially the world's most circulated ancient book, is their guiding light on how to get through, ironically, today. The people who wrote the Bible, they didn't have working toilets, but there is a lot to learn about how they dug holes and pooped so you could flush today as you keep your eye on the prize, otherwise known as tomorrow. Your marriage is experiencing some rocky times. Well, you should take the advice from guys that had hundreds of wives in the Bible. Or maybe you're a married couple deciding on what contraception method is best for you. It's a private matter, but did you know that a Jehovah's Witness can access yesterday via the Bible? And Jehovah had this to say from the Watchtower of the 1983 year, 6-1, page 27. We are told this, quote, "There are those that have said that the Bible describes masturbation in Genesis chapter 38, and that Onan was put to death for the offense. But this is not true. The Bible says that when Onan did have relations with his brother's wife, he wasted his semen on the earth. So apparently, Onan interrupted sexual relations with Tamar, spilling his semen on the ground rather than giving it to Tamar. He did this because he did not want to raise up children in the name of his dead brother. And it was for this failure to perform brother-in-law marriage, well, that Onan was put to death. End quote. Yesterday, and what a Jehovah's Witness should be considering. Are Jehovah's Witnesses sure that they should be leaving today and entering a world of yesterday via the Bible? Onan was killed by Jehovah for, forgive the term, especially to the ladies who, he was killed for pulling out. And well, I got questions on what the hell Noah was doing for 500 years with Mrs. Noah, considering there was no drugstores in his day to pick up some, stuff. Oh, the irony. Onan probably entered a world of yesterday once he learned about Noah. And well, it wasn't a great decision after all. Well, Noah was doing it, I think. But Jehovah's Witnesses today should dismiss all of this and consider the biblical world of yesterday when making big decisions. Jehovah's Witnesses spend all of their thinking time in either the world of yesterday or, as we'll see, tomorrow. Just like the Disney sign says, it happens every week in their kingdom halls. And with that, I hope I have not destroyed someone's view of Disneyland. But that sign, about 13 years ago, when I was older and out of the organization, I read it and I just sighed. That sign that I'd looked at since I was a little kid had suddenly taken on completely new meaning. Aside from their love of the past and yesterday by means of the Bible, sorry, we just don't have time to really flesh that out. We'll leave it alone. They also love to point at their own organization's yesterdays on a regular basis in their books, their magazines, their videos, their J-Dub broadcasts. It's one of the more bizarre habits of the governing body, in my opinion. They continue to bring up Chuck Russell. They continue to roll out Joe Rutherford. They've mothballed books by these guys, but they keep rolling them out as great people, all of which, by the way, highlight their long history of failure for any thinking Jehovah's Witness. It takes a certain amount of nerve to show photos of the book Millions Now Living Will Never Die to today's Jehovah's Witnesses. Look at this book from yesterday. Who wants to tell them? Nonetheless, every week in their kingdom halls, welcome to yesterday. And as a small side point, one of my favorite JW moments involving yesterday has still and will always be my one and only visit to Charles Taze Russell's gravesite outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I did it. One look at that pyramid as I was driving my rental car up the road had me laughing as hard as I had ever laughed. I can't even tell you how that's burned on my brain. Turning the corner and seeing it. I'd heard about it. I'd read about it. There it is. And if you'd like to see a photo of my visit, it's live on this show's website. You can click on the link. It'll show you me leaning up against Chuck's pyramid. What a moment. To think I waited in line for over an hour to ride Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and it was completely forgotten the entire experience once I saw Chuck's pyramid. It has to be one of my personal favorite yesterdays. And oddly, one they don't want you to see anymore because they had it removed a couple years ago. Unbelievable. I am very, very fortunate to have taken the time, money, and what it took to go see that thing. It was real. But back to that sign. That sign in Disneyland took on all new comparable meaning when it says, enter the world of fantasy. Look, I have done so many past shows on this before, and most of them are much more serious in tone. However, for anyone new that may have stumbled into this crazy podcast, let me bluntly state it. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, or even if you're not, Jehovah's Witnesses' entire life is a fantasy. Yes, I know that's a bold statement. I know it might sting. I'm trying to make this a stupid comical episode so that it doesn't sting as much, but it stings. And I encourage you to do your own research. Pick any random subject as a Jehovah's Witness or from your time as one that always puzzled you. Just pick one and study it. Study it deeply, including outside sources. You don't just need the only website powered by Holy Spirit. Use outside sources. In addition, you can look at old episodes where I break down history and timelines, who said what and more, all leading to the fantasy that dominates the Jehovah's Witness world. It's fantasy. Going back to the sign at Disneyland that says, here you leave today and enter the world of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy. And as I looked at that sign, and with that, entering Disneyland at that time, and where all that training in my life as a Jehovah's Witness that I had undergone, I realized, my God, that sign has been there since I was a kid, and it literally described my entire life as a Jehovah's Witness. Leaving today, yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy. We got yesterday, we got tomorrow. I'm guessing you know where my mind goes when I say that it is all a fantasy. And it's sad because it's the fantasy that makes Disneyland as an experience so much fun. It's a blast. But in the real world, when your entire life is built around fantasy, I guarantee you that a living hell is right around the corner. And in fact, oh, the irony, because this exact dynamic is depicted in Disney's classic cartoon, Pinocchio, where the puppet who wants to be a little boy goes to a place called Pleasure Island only to learn it's all a lie, it's all a trap. He becomes a jackass in the cartoon. He gets jailed. Sound familiar? And on the ride at Disneyland, you can see it all. Apologies for being blunt here, but Jehovah's Witnesses find themselves in the exact same predicament as my guy Pinocchio. And if you don't think you're being controlled like puppets, think again. Serving 11 men they'll likely never personally know, all the while believing they need to obey those men to make it to Pleasure Island, a Paradise Earth. I'm here to tell a Jehovah's Witness listening, it doesn't end well. And that apostate, you remember the one on the Pinocchio ride, the apostate, Jiminy Cricket, was trying to warn Pinocchio the entire time. And in the end, wouldn't you know it, the evil little cricket was, that apostate, well, he was right about everything. It was all a trap. One of the most popular sections of the Disney parks is where you find Pinocchio, that dark ride. It's called Fantasyland. And well, I'm good at letting it all go over after a few quick seconds and just enjoying the spirit of Disneyland. But when I walk off of Main Street, USA, and I walk through the castle doors, my last couple of visits there, I'm not going to lie to anybody here, and I don't want to ruin your trip. I had a small chuckle. I laughed. Fantasyland is an appropriate name for the world of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I absolutely hate that all the similarities of the faithful slave's teachings ever occurred to me in the way it did at Disneyland. Some are out here thinking, dude, I got to turn this episode off, or this is stupid, or he's really reaching on some of this. And I'm here to tell you, I completely respect that. Might be, but I warned you this was a brain dump. And before the DMs pour in, yes, I know many of Disney's stories are based on much older stories that they expanded on and Disneyfied. I know that. I've read some of them. So many, even in that case, come to think of it, many of the JW doctrines find a kindred spirit in Disney's Fantasyland because much of what Jehovah's Witnesses believe were ripped off from people prior and witnessified. I mentioned the dark ride Pinocchio earlier, but how about Snow White? You ever thought about it? Oh no, I feel like I'm giving a public talk here. Where do I begin? We have a woman. See if any of this sounds familiar. We have a woman eating a poisoned apple given to her by an evil witch. I wonder what this could be like it too. At least she didn't get inside a snake to do it. She was just a witch. But the woman goes to sleep. And if this all brings back trauma from the book study when studying the Revelation Climax book, well, I get it, because it did for me too. You've got a woman, Snow White, much like God's wifely organization. She's beautiful, but she's in danger. She is helped along by 11 little men. Oh, wait, only 7 in her story, but you get the point. Now there's 11 little men who also need a little help. The evil witch at the end of Snow White is crushed by a rock, no doubt inspired by Daniel's prophetic vision, right? Along comes a prince to wake her from the curse. Wait a minute. The dwarfs are ready when he arrives. That's right, the 7 little men. They're ready when the prince arrives, as are animals. This all sounds so familiar. The prince rescues the woman. They never commit fornication, by the way. They just get married the right way. The end. And I can't help now when I look at Snow White thinking, wait a minute, did David Splane write this? There it is. Fantasyland also features one of my favorites. It's probably my favorite of the dark rides, Peter Pan. He flies. He dupes the bad pirates, including Captain Hook. He has a tiny fairy helper named Tinkerbell. Oh, and he never ages, and he lives forever in a place called Neverland. It's a paradise whom the author says illustrates the mind of a child or escapism. Uh-oh, but he hangs out there with a group of guys known as the Lost Boys. Some of those Lost Boys' names are Charles Taze Russell, Joe Rutherford, Nathan Knorr, Fred Franz. Wait a minute, sorry, got off track. And by the way, the line for the Peter Pan ride always pisses me off. It is always so long. But who doesn't want to fly in a pirate ship? Come on. With each of these stories, I feel like my childhood was devastated because I could relate it directly to my experience as a Jehovah's Witness. Right next to that one is Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, which really is a good look at a life as Jehovah's Witness. It's a wild ride, including the ride, as you remember, ending in hell, complete with demons and devils, otherwise known as the common grave, according to Chuck Russell and the governing body, and incidentally, also the eventual outcome of almost every smiling little kid you see in Disneyland that day, because, well, they aren't baptized Jehovah's Witnesses. So just wait until they get a load of Armageddon. Pass the churro. You can't unsee it, and I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. And then there's the most appropriate fantasy of all, come to think of it, Alice in Wonderland. That's a cool ride. We got Mad Hatters, we got Cheshire Cats, we got a nasty queen, we got caterpillars. They all talk. Everybody talks. It's a trip based on a masterpiece of a book by Lewis Carroll. It is a masterpiece. You remember the story. Alice makes the mistake of listening to a talking white rabbit. A woman listening to a talking animal. Where have I heard that before? And follows him down a rabbit hole, something Jehovah's Witnesses are counseled to never do with apostates or the internet, otherwise known as be curious. You eventually get on the ride to Tweedledee and Tweedledum. You're looking for a cheap shot at Stephen Lett and Jeffrey Jackson here. I know, I thought about it, but no, I'm not going to say it. Tweedledee and Tweedledum. One person's interpretation of those two characters is this, quote, Tweedledee and Tweedledum tell her the tale of the curious oysters, which is about how curiosity can lead to terrible consequences. Is that kind of like a Jehovah's Witness talking to an apostate or being curious about the organization's history? I don't know. Back to the quote, this shows how adults often use stories to control children with fear and to destroy children's sense of imagination and curiosity by telling them to quit asking questions and grow up. Tweedledee and Tweedledum symbolize parents who are trying to keep Alice's imagination in check. End quote. And so here comes the cheap shot. Tweedledee and Tweedledum really do look a lot like Stephen Lett and Jeffrey Jackson. Does it sound familiar? Don't be curious. Don't ask questions. I'm not even going to dive into the claims that it's all inspired by drugs and hookahs and mushrooms. Alice in Wonderland is crazy. It's just a fun story. By the end, by the way, we're all supposed to realize that it was all just a dream, a fantasy. It's a fantasy. If only real life was so forgiving for a Jehovah's Witness, but it's not. But Fantasyland is best described as the core doctrine of Jehovah's Witnesses, at least in my opinion. Once you're able to step back from it all and really think about getting up on Saturday mornings, driving into a random neighborhood, knocking on strangers' doors, and telling them we will once again live with the animal kingdom, eating a plant-based diet, speaking Hebrew forever on a paradise earth. Well, folks, it sounds an awful lot like believing that it's a small world after all, and it's a real possibility, with everyone just getting along and being young and all the colors and joys and happiness and singing that song that is now stuck in your head. You're welcome. I hope you sing it the rest of the day. I could go on to compare so many more things inside this amusement park that I enjoyed as a kid and how it all changed when I became an adult and had experienced a lifetime of Jehovah's Witnesses and realized, wow, the comparisons are endless. So, if at this point I haven't ruined all things Disney for you, and I genuinely hope I haven't, and you don't yet hate my guts, how about closing out with a few random thoughts? Here goes. Why in the world does Goofy talk but Pluto doesn't? They're both dogs. If anyone can explain this to me, please DM me. Welcome to my brain at a far too young age. How about this? Why do Jehovah's Witnesses think it's okay to visit an amusement park with haunted houses, talking animals, and more? Shouldn't they avoid Disneyland like the plague? Every animal that talked in their holy book, it was a bad thing. And how about the fact that Disneyland is called the Magic Kingdom? Do Jehovah's Witnesses know how the governing body feels about magic? From the book You Can Be God's Friend, it's a workbook, lesson 13, page 21, Jehovah's Witnesses are told this, quote, Jehovah condemns magic because those practices can put one directly under the power of Satan the devil. End quote. Unless you're a Jehovah's Witness hanging out at Disneyland, then it's okay. Someone explain this. Jehovah apparently understands when you want to go to the Magic Kingdom, just not any other place. Just ask the Jehovah's Witnesses and their kids this one. You go to Disneyland, the Magic Kingdom? What? But that same family is very likely to look you in the eye and tell you they would never ride the Harry Potter ride at Universal Studios because Harry Potter is demonic. However, Cinderella's fairy godmother, she's perfectly okay. Welcome to the minds and lives of Jehovah's Witnesses when visiting Disneyland. Okay. How about this? I mentioned it. Disney has made trillions off the backs of talking animals, just like the Bible, where you get a talking snake, a talking donkey, and according to Revelation 8:13, a talking eagle. If you cried at Bambi or wanted to cuddle Flounder during The Little Mermaid, look no further than Jehovah's Witnesses believing that Jehovah himself used to allow animals to talk to us. That's right. Welcome. You're welcome. How about this? In Beauty and the Beast, the cups, the saucers, the forks, and the spoons, they all talk. I shuddered, thinking I used to be scared of anything we got at a garage sale that might be inhabited by the demons. We were taught that in the 70s. Look, Jehovah's book features talking animals, so Disneyland gets a pass. But talking dishware? Wait a minute. Folks, this must be the stuff of demons. Who can forget the governing body confirming that inanimate objects can be the lurking place of demons? You need proof? Here's one for you. The Watchtower of December 15th, 1966 tells us, quote, a vital question to ask if one experiences troubles with the demons is, have you accepted any gifts from relatives or persons who dabble in spiritism? Another Christian woman kept a handbag given her by an aunt who was a fortune teller. Using the handbag in the ministry, she experienced powerful thoughts of, go home. Bad thoughts rushed into her mind almost audibly, all of them anti-kingdom. She could not understand herself as these negative thoughts entered her mind as if by telephone, so that she complained of hearing herself think. Only after getting rid of the handbag did she get relief. End quote. At one point, demons were getting it on with our beautiful human women, but now the governing body says they might just be living in your purse. It's too much. It's too much. And so Beauty and the Beast has forever been ruined for me. Forks and spoons and dishes can't talk. This is demonized. Okay, on to the next one. I want to spend a couple of hours on this one, but Jehovah's Witnesses, particularly the men, is it safe to say they're looking for Cinderella? They're looking for Pocahontas. They're looking for Mulan, Belle, Ariel, and so many others. Disney doesn't have the corner on unrealistic expectations of women. Take a look at the Jehovah's Witness organization. Make-believe women are encouraged inside Jehovah's Witnesses. Men are encouraged to chase them and only them. Okay. How about this? Sorry, gonna just be real brief. Jehovah's Witnesses miss the point of Monsters, Inc. Great cartoon, by the way. They rescue a little girl from danger in Monsters, Inc. They rescue a little girl. I don't think we're seeing a lot of that inside Jehovah's Witnesses. And the laughter stops. How about this? Do the elders go out and offer counsel to Jehovah's Witnesses watching the cartoon Cars. I mean, Lightning McQueen is not field service friendly. We need more seats to go out into the ministry. Watching that cartoon could give preachers of God's word a false impression. And if you think I'm really reaching on this one, folks, I was an elder. I saw people counseled for the type of car they drove. True story. And then finally, because I'm sick of myself, does paradise and their version of paradise seem a little bland to you? I feel like in a lot of ways it's going to be the world of 101 Dalmatians, where literally everyone looks, dresses, and sounds the same. We're all just going to look the same. Okay, sick of me yet? I'm done. I could keep going. Welcome to a very disturbed mind of a former Jehovah's Witness. In conclusion, in the end, I realized that Walt Disney may have plagiarized the most important men to ever be on earth, the leaders of Jehovah's Witnesses. You see, stupidly, as I stared at that sign and all of these dumb thoughts I just shared with you, I also realized that Disneyland opened in July 1955, a full 41 years after Jesus returned invisibly to be the king in heaven, but allowed, of course, the demons that he himself created, including Satan, to continue ruling the kids' table here on earth. All of his ideas, from Fantasyland to Tomorrowland to the central figure of Mickey Mouse, gotta be honest, it reminds me of a certain favorite son. And hell, how was I this naive? Maybe Walt Disney just ripped off the Bible and Jehovah's Witnesses. Is it possible? Let me assure anyone that listened to all of this nonsense this week that I still enjoy going to Disneyland with the little people. In fact, I love it. It's so much fun. But here's the thing. There's one ride I will not step foot on in that park, and I never have. There's no amount of begging or guilt that will get me to do it. What is that ride? It's the Mad Hatter's Teacups. Some people laugh, some people endure it, some people throw up everywhere. Round and round and round and round they go and go and go. And I've had enough of all that when I was a Jehovah's Witness. Thanks for being with me this week and enduring this nonsense. One final thought. I wonder what Noah would think of the Jungle Cruise. Okay, I'll stop. Wherever you may be well.